Hello everyone, and welcome to the Indian Trails Public Library District's YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me for the Launchpad's program Mason Jar Lid Pin Cushion. We'll be going over the material that you'll need or that you have in your kit if you picked a kit up, as well as going through the process itself of how to make it. Just a little reminder, you can always click on the events link on our main website for more programs that are coming up. And we have several different playlists on this channel from different areas of the library, so feel free to check those out. If you want to receive notifications about content that we put up, you'll have to subscribe to the channel, and then you would hit the little bell to be notified. And then of course, if at the end of all of this you liked this program, then you can give it a thumbs up down below. Alright, let's get started. Alrighty, so let's first go over what came in the kit that you got if you registered and received the bag that we made for you. So what should be inside is a small mason jar. Comes apart. It's got the two-piece lid, right? That'll be important for later. Ooh, I think I nicked the nail. Okay. You also received some thread. Yours will be white. I am using a bright orange so that it's easier for you to see my stitches. So that's important. You also received a hand sewing needle that was wrapped up in painter's tape. But you got one needle, and that's all you need. It's a very simple stitch that we'll be doing. Don't know that I mentioned this. No. So it's the, you got a piece of fabric that's roughly 10 by 10 inches. That'll be just fine for what we're doing. We're going to be cutting out a circle out of this that can be up to 9 inches, as small as about 5 inches. So you should have plenty of space for that. You also received polyfill. So this is stuff that this is filling. You would find this in like quilts and that kind of thing. Usually with quilting it would be one long sheet, but you can certainly make it with this as well. Same with stuffed animals, that kind of thing. So I gave you guys a lot because I wasn't sure how poofy you would want your pin cushion to be. So if you only end up using a little bit, no problem, you can just make more of these projects. If you end up using a lot of it, that's fine too. It's totally your preference. So in addition to that, the kit came with a smaller piece than this, but this is just felt. So your kit will have a piece of felt that, like the fabric, will be cutting out a piece, a circular piece of this. And that'll be, we'll be using the inner piece of the lid of the mason jar to measure that. So some things that did not come in the kit, but I suggest that you pull out, are a pair of scissors. They don't have to be fabric scissors, but if you've got them, go for it. And then if you've got any kind of tailor's chalk or pencils, those would be great because they're water soluble. It's not like you have to wipe it down with water after, though. I mean, it's just a pin cushion. So you could also just use a pencil or a pen. We can measure from the back anyway, so it wouldn't be visible. So no worries there. So just some kind of writing utensil. In addition to that, I suggest if you have a hot glue gun, to pull that out, as well as a little stick for it as well. That'll make this a whole lot easier. I would say if you didn't have this and you were using fabric glue or something like that, I would doubt that it would really hold all that well. So I would use a hot glue gun for sure. So there are all of our supplies for the evening. Not really all that many, so that's excellent. So maybe if you have some left over, you can always make another one too. I know a lot of people make these with different size ones. I chose the smaller jar because if it's for sewing stuff, a lot of the sewing pieces that whether it's clips or pins or whatever, they're going to be a lot smaller. So I thought if we got a really big one, I mean that's a lot of pressure to have to fill that away. So all right, so there's your kit. There are the tools that we'll be using. So go ahead and grab those and then we'll reconvene and get started. Alright, so I have pulled out the fabrics that we'll be using today. And what we'll start with is measuring or tracing and then cutting. That's going to be our first step, is cutting the material that we are going to be using. So for this, I already took out the inner piece of the mason jar lid. So if you unscrew the lid, there's that secondary little piece. We're going to trace this. So what I'll do, oh, and this is my tailor's chalk, by the way. So I'm just going to go around all the way. Let's see. A little bit hard to see, but it is there. So I will wait and cut that out in just a moment. What I'm going to do first is take the back side of this fabric and then we'll measure. I think I'll do, oh, I did bring out a ruler as well. So if you've got a ruler handy, measuring tape, anything like that, that might help you. Go ahead and bring that out. I'm going to do several different marks so that I can get to a circle. If you have like a bowl or something like that, this is far too small, but you could always use a bowl that's opening is 6 inches or something like that. Put it upside down and trace that. Otherwise, you might get stuck doing it like I'm doing it here. So every so often I'm going to make a little mark so I know where 7 inches is. And although we want it to be circular, it really, really does not have to be perfect. So just like, honestly, so this is a rectangle, right? But it's an imperfect one. This is how imperfect your circle can be. It really does not matter. We're going to stuff it with the polyfill and then stuff it through, see, sneak peek, through the cap, so it really doesn't have to be perfect by any means. It's getting stuffed anyway. That's funny. Okay, so let's see. You know what? I didn't do a midpoint. That would probably help me. So let's go ahead and measure this. Wonder if I've already played the fool on this one. I did it too far over. That's great. So I'm just going to get it as close as possible. If it's 6 or 7 inches, don't really care. But what we'll do with them is once we have them ready to go, we'll honestly just cut them out. And again, they don't have to be perfect. If anything, you'll want the felt one to be a little bit more perfect, but even this is fine, and that's not perfect. All right, I'll see you in a few minutes. Alrighty, friends. So as you can see, I cut out the felt circle, not perfect, whatever. Cut out the circle of the colorful fabric, not perfect either. It doesn't matter, it's good enough for me. So what I have done is I've threaded my needle here so that I can start sewing. What we're going to be doing is going in and out at kind of large intervals, just enough so that we can make a sort of drawstring once the thing is finished. Once we're done and have filled the polyfill so that we can kind of draw it closed. So it'll be something like you'll want to leave yourself, if I could pick this up, I don't even have, okay. You'll want to leave yourself a long tail, see, like this, so that you have something to grab onto at the end, and you'll do that at the way end of the circle as well. But what we'll do is, I'll show you a few of them. We're gonna go, you wanna stay about a ½ inch to an inch in. So I'll probably do about a ½ inch. We're gonna go, gotta make sure I keep the tail out. Where is that sucker? It's a bit early for snafus, isn't it? Okay, so I'll just hang on to this while I do it. So then that means I'm going to come back up over by this teapot. Again, doesn't need to be perfect. It's just a drawstring. Okay, so that's the beginning one. But from here, we're going to go, you know, I should have made a, so what you'll want to do is make a knot here before you start. I thought just holding onto it would be sufficient, but it's actually coming at me from two different places. So just make a knot at the way beginning for the tail that you're gonna leave, and then that'll leave enough room for the needle that you are going to sew with to go all the way around. And we'll just go over about this much, and then under, over, under, over, so it'll be about an inch long, maybe a little bit shorter. So those are pretty long stitches. So it should go by pretty fast, especially if you chose to do a smaller circle. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to make a, something like that. I'm going to make a knot like I should have from the beginning, and I will see you in a moment. Okay, so here is the finished sewn product, and you can see the two tail ends that I left at the end, because what we'll do is we'll fill this, it'll be filled with stuff, and then we'll pull it to tighten it to close it, which I can show you in a second what that means. But I wanted to mention something. I did something backwards the first time, last time. So I was thinking that at the way beginning I would be able to leave the strand out. It was actually backwards. So this actually is the last part that I did just now. I pulled it through to the front, and just before that, this was the last step that I had done after making the round circle. So I just left extra thread hanging on both sides, if you can see that. And both of these were done at the end of the hand sewing. So what this kind of is going to look like I'll move this a little bit so you can see it. Sorry about that shadow there. Okay, so what this kind of looks like is, let's see. So I'm going to pull on it a little bit so you can see it's starting to kind of ruffle up a little bit. So you can see how we end up closing it. Kind of pack it in there. And all I'm doing is pulling on these two suckers. So I have to pull on those a little bit tighter. Make sure that it's not old thread or it'll totally rip on you. See, and then that's what the top ends up looking like. So what we end up doing here, this is going to be popping out of there, right? So what we have to do is kind of get this as closed as possible if we can. Do you see? So it's a nice little bun at the top. Looks like a muffin top. And then here we want to actually stuff this, and this is where the hot glue comes in handy, because we can just attach the fabric to the top. I'm just going to stuff that down, tighten it again. Okay, and what we do here at this point is take any extra fabric like you see here. Once you've got it down, the filler, once you've got the filler down in the fabric is when you tighten it up and you hot glue the fabric down to the cap. That's what you would do next. If you didn't have any hot glue, then you get it down as far as possible, right? And then you put the flat felt over it to cover the unfinished seams. And then this all goes right back into here. So let me get my hot glue gun hot, and we can start getting our fabric down. This part is probably the trickiest because the polyfill, the filler, and the fabric are a little unruly. Okay, so let me get that heated up, and then we can go from there. Alrighty, so I just finished hot gluing the fabric down to the inner metal piece of the lid. What I did was yank on the two long pieces that I had from when I was hand sewing, and from there, make sure that's focused, and then from there, as I was holding it down, they were going tight up against the metal piece. So while they were doing that, with my other hand, I used the trusty hot glue gun to hot glue all of the pieces down. You can see, so these I will snip actually because we don't need them anymore, these guys here. But these, you can see that there are actually little folds that went over from just the excess of the fabric, which is fine. But what I will end up doing, I have to get another stick, but I'll actually glue all of those down as well, because remember at the end I want it to be real flat so that we can put this over it, the felt, which will kind of hide all of those imperfections, which is nice. And if it were flat enough, I could play around and see how it fits. But this one, this is fun. You can see actually kind of all of the nasty pieces of glue. But it's fun because you can see this one's actually quite flat, but it's still puffy. it's dense, so that's kind of nice. So if you wanted like a low profile one, there you go. Try a 7-inch one and just fill it as much as you can. What I had done previously was a really puffy one, and it's kind of wrinkly. I should have, I think, maybe ironed it before I had kept going. But I think this one was like a 9-inch one, and it's very, very puffy. You can see there's a ton of leftover. I have it down here, but there's a ton of leftover fabric that I'll be cutting off. You can see the difference though here. So totally up to you, whichever one you want. You'll just go bigger measurements for the real poofy one, and smaller measurements for something like this. Now if you do something that's like 4 or 5 inches, I think that would be very small, unless you're able to get it so that there's still quite a bit of poofiness, there's just less extra here at the bottom, then that would make sense too. So whatever you want to do, give it a go. Okay, let me get that extra hot glue gun, and then we'll stick this on and get it into our mason jar. Alright, be back in a few. Alrighty, so I went crazy with the glue. Yay! That's okay. And actually, what I also did was I stuffed it through the rim of the top. So what you're gonna want to do after doing it myself, because I know that this I just had to cut down a little bit, because if we don't, it's gonna have a hard time closing. See, it's a little bit bigger than the actual rim of the jar, so I might have to cut it a little bit more. But what I will suggest that you do before, so go ahead and glue down the fabric as we discussed. And then once it's dry, go ahead and try pincushion side first, stuffing it through the circle. So not quite using this part of the cap yet, but just stuff the actual pincushion, or I'm sorry, this should already be attached, right? Because we just glued it. But go ahead and stuffing this through the rim, and if you do it slowly but gently, and then kind of tug very gently on the fabric, it'll ease it through as well. Now when you do that, some of them might come up just a little bit. They may protest to being shoved through. That's okay, just add a little bit of glue. And then we can do this and test closing it, because I mean, we want a functional one, right? So right now, it feels soft. Let's see. Got too much of this stuff here. There you go, you have to give it a little bit of pressure. Okay, so it does work when you give it a little bit of pressure. We're gonna have to add this, which it's gonna like even less, but we want to cover up that mess there. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue this piece here. Make sure that goes on before it cools. There we go. And so we do have that kind of lumpiness from the fabric in the way corners or edges. circles have corners, are on the edges of the cap of the lid. So we'll see if we have to kind of push those down more to get it to close all the way. But so far, I mean, it's looking good. That'll dry in no time at all. And there's a cute little pincushion. Voila! Might be too early still, but with some effort. Too lumpy, so we're gonna push it further up. And if you have the chance, before you get to this part, you can always try using your scissors to snip the extra fabric that's down at the end, and then you might not have this problem. I think it may come up as an issue regardless, but okay, it's mostly the corners that we need to worry about. So yeah, that's super lumpy. Okay. Come on, friend. You can do it. Please. So it's too thick. You can see it's covering the ridge. Try this again with some force. You can see the pink cushion's not moving there. I think someone that's stronger than I am can have an okay time with this, but I'm gonna keep working on this. I'm gonna be doing the same thing, honestly, just maybe with a pen. I'll shove this down so that you can see the second lip. Okay, so just so you're not watching me do the same exact thing over and over and over again, I'm going to put you on pause. Alrighty, so I got it to close. It's a miracle, but it did close. So there are some things that I have learned from this project that I'll have to keep in mind. Should I do it again, or should it be done by you all? So what seems to have happened is that the outside borders of the rim here are covered by our fabric, and so it covers the first set of grooves. So what that means is that it can't really catch on to this because it's too full here. So you could probably see what I've done here is when we cut out the felt circle, the same size as the inner part of the lid, you'll actually want to go about 1/4 of an inch to an inch smaller than that actual circle is. And you'll definitely want to trim the amount of fabric you have that goes around here. What I ended up having to do was I took closed scissors so that they were a little bit more blunt. And what I ended up doing was just like pushing down around the entire, every edge every part of it, and you can see like it really gives too. So you can tell that it's kind of further down than is ideal. But what we want is for that rim here, this one, to be showing so that it works well with the can or the jar that you're using. See, like that gives a lot. So you might have to play around with it. Try to trim as much as possible from around the sides, or just around it here, the circle here. And then from there, you should be able to get it on to your jar. So, few hiccups, but that is okay. That is what crafting is all about, isn't it? So, thank you for joining me this evening for this this pin, what did we call it? Mason jar pin cushion program. If you enjoyed it, then please leave a like down below. If you like the content that we have, please be sure to subscribe to our channel, and feel free to hit the little bell to receive notifications if you would like to do that. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.